So this current drafting meta is evolving and evolving quickly. And this game between Damwon Kia and Bro is a very good example of this because especially in the second game of this series, as noted in the thumbnail, there's a lot of crazy combinations that teams are going for as basically their own tech picks in order to counter specific lanes. This is a meta where it's actually incredibly diverse, both stylistically and in terms of just the raw amount of champions available. And you're getting punished on like smaller pivots that you're not actually going for, or things that you don't really pick without thinking too much about. And I think Damwon especially gives really good examples of this. And although Bro maybe had their own prepared picks and I thought maybe were interesting, it's probably not enough in this case, but I digress. The idea here is still the creativity behind these teams. To start off, I also want to note the Bro triple jungle pool ban, which is a little bit of an interesting one because it could be very specifically tailored to the idea that it's not supposed to make sense in terms of just gaining draft advantage. It's just supposed to be something that gets them stylistically where they want to be, and they want to draft towards their play style. It's not drafting to get a good draft. It's a good draft contextually against their opponent per se. So I don't 100% necessarily agree with it, and this is on their coaching staff to decide, but that is basically their justification. On the side of Damwon, I've been seeing more teams go for the Nautilus ban. It's specifically on blue to answer the potential R1, R2. It could just be because of specific openers they go for, and maybe they could be afraid. They just don't like dealing with it. I could kind of see it because if you open things like Azir and you ban Orianna, and you're kind of getting away scot-free, right? Because Azir, one of the only weaknesses in terms of engage champions to Azir is probably something like Nautilus, which is true with true engage, and I think that's a little bit interesting. So what I wanted to point out here though is the R1 R2 here from Bro. So the Hui is nothing special. I think it's totally fine. It doesn't really reveal anything. What I find interesting is the Smolder pick on 2, and the reason for this is because the way I see Bro positioning it, it's a top ADC flex. So they are hedging and giving DK something to chew on in order to think about like the specific matchups. It's like disincentivizing things like Asante, which are very common with comps like this, and then you play for bot side. So by pre-picking it, they're telling DK to not really go for it. And I think in concept it could be cool. I do like the response from DK because they actually go for the Aatrox blind, and they kind of just sign up for like, all right, cool. We don't really care. We're going to scale too. And now basically the outcomes you're left with are either you're in a matchup that you're okay with on top side for DK, or they commit to Smolder bot, and then you can get a free counter pick on the Smolder bot. Counter pick per se, although there's limited ability to do so, but you kind of see the gist of what I'm going for here, right? Smolder is more of a scaling champ. So in response to potentially that happening, right, DK actually Uno reversed the Cassante dynamic, and now the obligation is on Bro to think about where they want to position the Smolder. And now picking the Smolder early is actually not something in their favor anymore, because it's probably not something they wanted to sit on, and they're probably just going to get counterpicked by it at this point, and it's not really that ideal. The Sejuani is probably just something that they also think is good, and it's also, they kind of shot themselves in the foot with this because they banned 3 junglers. They're burning a lot of resources draft wise in order to force the draft in the way they want. I could argue they could just be less flawed of a team and just draft more flexibly, but if this is the way they want to draft, this is an example of how much it costs, right? Because on the side of DK, you kind of just get to ban whatever you want now, because Bro is burning all their resources on jungle and then ADC counter picks that they set themselves up for, and then as a result, there's still the Kalista Renata that's still available, which is wild to be able to get it to B4, B5. The stonks on that pick went down significantly. And keep in mind that DK didn't even have to pick Maokai on 2, although I do think it's excellent. I think it's a really strong just overall pick, both jungle and support. But the fact that Bro put so much priority on what they want to do, where they want to target, they basically used all their bans on things just They're drafting to not lose. They're not drafting to win. And I don't really think this is a good example of the use case for red side, because I don't think they're taking great advantage of their R3 and R5 picks. Like even picking Jackson to Aatrox, it's more of like a soft counter. Like their strategy going into this probably didn't play out the way they thought it would. And I think it's good on DK that they managed to just stay relatively flexible, right? Because when you open with the Azir, you're basically showing nothing. Then you respond with more picks that leave your options open. I would say in this case the Maokai, and then the Aatrox is their main sort of like committal decision. And that's where, if you look at this draft, DK have a lot of best in slot champions, right? I don't think the Rakan is a great answer into the Renata either. It was like, it's quite the missed opportunity, if I do say so myself. And I think Bro found themselves with quite the predicament. So that's basically how I think this draft kind of fumbled for them. And they probably had a strategy, but it just didn't play out the way they thought it would. Jumping into game 2 of this series, they definitely adapted. And I wanted to point out the different styles of draft right now. So you have your poke drafts, and you have your ADC focused drafts where you're just dominating bottom lane with like your Varuses or your Ashes. And then you have, there's been some Chinese drafts where they just go all out and they completely focus on dominating the opponent. Note that there is a Senna ban here on Bro, so they lost their first game, but they don't want to deal with the Senna matchup. So that probably means they're prioritizing something else. And in this case, they just go for Hui again, which is fine, but there's not much to comment on that one. Let's put it that way. So DK, they go for Lucian Prio, still pretty good in a region, I would say, like LCK, which can punish greatly. I would have liked, I'm not sure if it's a stylistic thing from Bro again, but I think I really would have liked seeing the Varus pick here, or something of that nature. There needed to be some sort of answer into this Lucian lane, because I don't think you really can just let this happen as well. But I guess their idea was like they can't let them have everything. So, and they didn't want DK to go for the Senna style either. So it's really pick your poison and what you're going for. And in this case, that was what they opted for. And there's a bit of a mismatch here, right? So some of the poke champions are actually still available as well. And but DK have basically kind of told you guys, or hinted like, hey, we're probably gonna play to engage. So just a quick heads up. But there's a lot of opportunity for DK here to get a lot of counters, because they get a free counter pick on 4 with the Cassante show, and then they could get really creative on 5 if they wanted to. And this is where the poke parts comes in, because instead they actually save top counter pick for R5, which is fine. So there might be some thoughts on counter picking Cassante already on 4, because you already see it, so why would you not? But in this case, stylistically, in terms of the overall direction of their comp, DK have opted to save top for R5, because there could be picks that could be more optimal. And I'm specifically looking at Smolder here, or Twisted Fate. That would be the main candidates in this case if you could pick another backliner and just go for Giga Stat Check. There are also other options like the Aatrox, like the Gnar, if you want to go more defensive and play for the Karma Poke. It really depends. And I think Cassante has a lot of options for these soft counters. No hard counters, but a lot of soft counters. This Sivir Yuumi, it's a very bro thing to do, I guess. This has to be something that they just prepared against the Lucian Nami or something like that. I honestly would have liked to see it against the Senna. If this was like your direction, in my opinion. Because I think the meta in bottom lane right now is very focused on bot lane domination, getting every objective, and drafting around that, right? The Sivir Yuumi is basically the antithesis for this. And if you're going to go for that, I think you're willing to handshake against that, against things like Senna lanes, where you're really willing to dilute the lane. Because this is the ultimate version of that. You're just nuking the wave, you're chilling, play for topside, but now there's no lanes to play for if you're Bro. Now you're just missing like a fundamental part about drafts because you need somewhere to play through in the early phases. Bro has nowhere to play through. It's a little bit unplayable. I'm not gonna lie, because you could argue that DK just has 3 winning lanes, and a lot of the time in pro, that is enough to win the game. And it's a cool try, but I think it's a mix of setting themselves up or either burning too many resources or accumulating their resources in the wrong place that ultimately cost Bro this draft. And although potentially gameplay was a big factor as well, these drafts were very ambitious from them, and that cost them a lot of this game and this entire series, I would say. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense to you guys. So yeah.